And guess what? We are live. So, first of all, let me read this. Poem from the bottom of a black hole. This is a poem from the bottom of a black hole. A singularity stretched into poetry, grasped by gravity, pulverized by pressure. The words, becoming thin wisps that slip ever inward and out of existence. There is no escape for matter or light. Only subatomic energy and white particles seem to confuse the patterns, confound the predictions, and weave the lines of poetry thread thin on the edges of reality before they slip in. This is a poem from the depths of a star's soul, a philosophy persuaded into a vague clarity, allowing no apparent animosity, only light years and luminosity. The flickering fires of a starry sky that spin ever onward and into oblivion. Wow, I thought that was pretty good. So,
I think it's pretty good.
alas, I did not write it, but that's fine. Sometimes, I would like to give credit to whoever. You can find this, I guess, on WordPress, Night Poetry on NITE poetry.wordpress.com. Not sure who the poet is. I'll share it later. But as we always do, what is the question here?
Wait, what is this? What are we doing here?
I mean, why do we even exist, right? But that's not the question I seek to answer today. The question, maybe I should just say, like, what is this as a disembodied voice? All right, so this is Shen, and this is SG2 on Space, the only weekly space show. We did not do it last week, so apologies. This month has been a little crazy for me on a personal, professional, whatever. No, work for a company that's going to the moon in about 2 weeks, so the schedule has been a little wacky. But glad to be here. This is episode 202, called Review of the Black Hole War. Oh, by the way, before I continue, let's just say thank you to all the Patreon supporters, patreon.com/SG2 on Space. I will leave a ticker running at the bottom. But thank you, Kyle Baker, Sam Welsh, and John Graves for your donations. And with that, I do want to, what was I going to say? That voice in the background, who was that? Does anybody
Who is that?
Yeah, like that voice. Who was that?
Hey, Shen.
Hello.
What up?
That is the headband guy, Leonard Kramer.
Yeah, that's what they say at the office. Somebody will come in and I want to talk to the guy. It was a guy who was wearing a headband, and they send him right over to me.
Is that what really happens?
Yes, actually.
I mean, I was curious, but then that might actually be truth, right? And it is, because you're the only guy I know who wears a different headband every day. So for people 10,000 years in the future watching this, realize that Leonard's fashion sense is not the current norm.
Yeah, it's not current. It's not. Yeah, that's right. That would be a good way to put it. It's not the current norm.
Not the current. Right. It was a norm at some point.
Yeah.
In this world, right? I don't
50
know
years ago. Yeah.
50 years ago.
Yeah, Janis Joplin, and
Okay.
So.
Yeah. So 50 years ago, this would have been, something.
Yeah. So what did you want to talk about?
Today we are talking about the other Leonard, or rather, let me put it this way.
Another
Leonard Kramer here. There's a book. Actually, there's a guy. There's a physicist named Leonard Susskind.
Yeah, he's a professor.
So Leonard Susskind is a professor of physics.
That's right, at Stanford in California.
And he's a theoretical physicist, and he's done a lot of work in string theory, quantum field theory, quantum cosmology, and a little while back he has something as a bet with Stephen Hawking, which he actually won. And he wrote a book about it called The Black Hole War: My Battle with Stephen Hawking. And it's essentially.
Well, I read the book. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. Take it away. Read the book.
I read the book. Yeah. So it's actually about this thing called the information paradox, and it really gets to some very fundamental under, you know, the undergirding of physical principles. And most people, you know, when you say about information, you know, they think, well, you know, the information in a book, or so this is really talking about entropy and the second law of thermodynamics, and the idea that black holes have temperature. And Stephen Hawking, who was a very famous physicist, and he was interesting because, you know, he has a very profound physical problem with his nervous system, and he actually couldn't move. I mean, he went, and that started about the time he was in graduate school in the early 70s. So, but he was brilliant, and he came up with these ideas about how black holes will consume information, or consume the matter and energy, and then they will re-radiate it, and all of the information is lost. So now he proposed this in there were a couple of papers in the early 70s, and he really came to prominence, I think, in 1975 or 1976, where he published this fundamental idea that black holes will radiate a kind of radiation which is called Hawking
radiation.
Hawking radiation.
Indeed.
And what it has to do with, the liberation of a pair. First of all, back up. We talked about field theory, and that all of the massive particles and particles in physics are manifestations of frothy fields. So there's an electron field, and there are quark fields, and all of those things. And so there's a constant production of pair particles that are virtual. So as most people know, black hole has an event horizon. I don't know how much yet.
So black line here, if you guys can see it.
And this was actually the solution. The mathematical description of this dates all the way back to 1917, with the what's called the Schwarzschild solution. But really, nobody really started to believe it until the 1970s. And we can talk about that another time. But Stephen Hawking and another physicist named Jacob Bekenstein, who in 72, he talked about what happens when a black hole consumes some information. And so he had this idea about bits of information, and the idea is that so information consists of bits, and the black hole, he came up with a formula for the temperature of the black hole, which is inversely proportional to the mass and other constants, like the Planck constant, the speed of light, and the gravitational constant, and the Boltzmann constant. So he combined all those things together to produce an equation that gave the temperature of the black hole.
He won the 2012 Nobel Prize in Physics. That's interesting.
Yeah. Right. So Bekenstein, yeah.
Yep.
So Hawking developed a very thorough theory about how black holes will radiate this energy, because if they have a temperature, it means that they radiate, and the mechanism for that to happen. And then this was and then he said that that it just consumes the information from outside. So everything that makes up, like if you throw a book into the black hole, then all the pages of the book and every writing on the book, it goes in there and then it's gone forever. And this doesn't seem to be much of a problem for like ordinary people. Like I've talked to engineers about this, and
engineers just assume that perfectly
briefly, yeah, they just shrug and go, "Well, the information's gone," So, right, right now, now get back to work, right? But the problem is that quantum mechanics has a principle that that the information is never lost. So what is information? So it's like, if you have a bathtub full of hot water, right? Well, the information that and really we're talking about the entropy consists of the state, the number of there it is. That's the entropy.
The Bekenstein-Hawking entropy formula for a black hole.
Right. So how do I explain this? The idea is if you have something burn up, right, and you know that all of the particles are burning and there's a chemical reaction and the smoke goes away. Well, in principle, you can reverse that. So you can go and every single individual bit of information or bit of the distinctions that make it what it is can be reversed. So at every instant in time, you should be able to reverse. Stephen Hawking was saying, no, that's not what happens in a black hole. In other words, when the information goes in, it disappears and it's gone forever. And Leonard Susskind and another physicist named Gerard de Hooft, and he's a Dutchman.
Wow, there's so many names here.
And the two of them, okay, so the way this was presented was in the late 70s, and in Suskind's book, he talks about there was this rich guy in San Francisco named Werner Erhard, and he was responsible he was like the creator of the EST seminars. It was like he was a motivational speaker, and he was very rich. He had made a lot of money, helping people overcome their inhibitions, and it was EST. There he is.
What is EST?
I remember EST as a teenager. I don't remember. It was something out there in California.
Okay, 2 weekend, 6-day, 60-hour course. No, officially it's EST standard training. Help one to recognize the situations we're holding them. Okay, so it's like a life-changing thing.
So this doesn't have anything to do with black holes, except that this guy was rich and he was a physics groupie, and he had the clout. He had enough money to be able to bring physicists from all over the world to California and have conferences. And Susskind and oh
wow,
Stephen Hawking and Gerard de Hooft and all of these physicists came to these conferences where they discussed
that's remarkable.
Right. I learned this by reading, reading his book, and so there was a meeting where Stephen Hawking was talking about how the information is lost, and they showed a diagram, what they call a Penrose diagram, of the black hole on the blackboard, and the information all goes in, and then nothing comes out, and we have this idea that black holes have no hair. So that's a little aphorism that was produced by John Wheeler, meaning that there's only three pieces of information that describe a black hole, and they're all exactly the same, and their surfaces are perfectly smooth.
So basically, you're saying if anything falls into a black hole, so to speak, then the information kind of disappears.
Then all of the distinctions that make anything what it is disappear.
That's what thought. Okay, go on.
And that's what they thought. That's what Stephen Hawking was promoting. Stephen Hawking was an authority and a true expert in general relativity, and he was no slouch with quantum mechanics either. But he didn't seem to have the same objection to that point that Gerard de Hooft and Leonard Susskind, and Leonard Susskind writes in this book, he's a witness to the controversy, was that he felt alone. It really bothered him when he'd be driving and he'd stop the car and he'd think about it, and it continued to bother him for both of them. They were colleagues, and they were trying to figure out what was wrong with Stephen Hawking's theory, because it was so thorough and so well defended, and they couldn't figure it out. And it went on for a long time. And also it was hard. It was one of the things that Susskind points out, is that one of his frustrations was that Stephen Hawking, he was difficult to communicate with, and he seemed to be immune to it. He didn't seem to understand, the profundity of this information paradox, and neither did anybody else, except it almost seems like just he and 't Hooft, Susskind and 't Hooft were the ones that were troubled by it, right? Yeah. And which is kind of, so they finally came to this, and I don't know exactly whether it was, I don't remember exactly, how they came to this, but and I've actually remember talking in this show about this before, that
say it again.
Okay, so a black hole is it's a black hole. So when you apprehend the black hole from far away, and I think we did the example of Bob and Alice, and Bob is far away and Alice is falling into the black hole, and when Bob watches if he watches Alice go into the black hole, her clock slows down, and she approaches the event horizon, and she slows down, and she gets dimmer and less visible, and slower and slower and slower, and Bob never witnesses Alice cross the event horizon, because her clock appears to stop. It doesn't really quite stop, but and that's not all. Everything else, everything that makes up this black hole that has ever fallen into it, is sort of stuck there on the surface, distorted and layered in like layers of strata, limestone cliffs or something, like a, not literally, but everything from outside looking in has been compressed and put onto that. And indeed, I think the conclusion that Susskind came out with was that the Hawking radiation, which is the result of paraparticle, virtual paraparticles that are produced on right above or very close to the event horizon. One particle goes in,
right?
Yeah, and then the other particle comes out, and it manifests as, it can be a photon. It comes out as radiation, and it carries away some of the material that's layered on the surface. And so that's how the information is preserved.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's the theory that Susskind and 't Hooft proposed to Stephen Hawking, and Stephen Hawking finally did concede that there was a problem, and that was the answer to the problem. But that's not all.
Continue.
One of the this matter of when Alice is approaching the black hole, she doesn't perceive any of this. So from her point of view, she just proceeds right through the event horizon, and nothing seems to happen to her. And so there's almost like a paradox, which I have to say I don't quite understand it. I've read it several times, and I don't understand how these two things are consistent. But Susskind insists that Bob, from far out, observes Alice just disintegrated by the Hawking radiation. Right. If he waits long enough, he just will see her over, over eons of time, but he'll see her just disintegrated and tossed out from the black hole, whereas Alice will fall through the black hole and nothing happens to her. From her point of view, nothing happens, and it's a it's I think this is really right at the crux of the theory of and where the state of the physics is as to this day. And so people will object that this can't be true, but evidently it is a consistent theory. And it also has to do with the fact that if you're observing something, then you will disturb it. If Alice falls through and is never observed, then she doesn't have, nothing happens to her. And that's the black hole information paradox. It's sort of a fun book. It's not a really challenging theoretical book. He does go over a lot of things that I found. I mean, I've already taken classes in quantum mechanics and that kind of thing. So he did go over a lot of things that I was already familiar with. But I'd encourage people to buy the book and have a look. So you'll learn a lot. He talks about the personalities involved, and which is very, very interesting. He started out in New York City in the early '60s is when he started graduate school. About I think '62. He went to Princeton. He didn't get into Princeton. He got into I guess Columbia. When he graduated, then he got a job. He became a professor at I can't remember the name. I think it's a yeshiva in northern Manhattan.
Are you still talking about Leonard Susskind?
Yeah, Leonard Susskind.
Yeah, assistant professor of physics, then associate professor at Yeshiva University.
Yeah,
which is in is an Orthodox Jewish university in New York City.
Yeah, and he talks about how he was going to actually he was up running. He has a little story where he was running up along the paths in northern Manhattan, north of Central Park, and his friend, an acquaintance came and stopped him, and actually it was very cold and he was tired and he actually wanted to go back, and so somebody that he knew stopped and said, "Are you going to the Dennis Sciamma's conference at Columbia?" And he didn't even know about it. And so, but he went. No, it wasn't at Columbia. It was at Yeshiva University. And so he goes back, and he was eating some soup, and he got distracted listening to the yeshiva students talking about whether on the Sabbath you should stock the toilet paper back onto the roll, or whether you should take it, and
this is all in the book.
Yeah, and so
Wow.
he
Right,
he didn't think much of that, right? And so he was late for the lecture, and so when he went to the lecture, he saw on the blackboard there was this strange formula where it had temperature and I mentioned it, the temperature and Planck's constant, the speed of light, Newton's gravitational constant, and Boltzmann's constant, and then the mass of a black hole, and then some other numbers. And he thought, this is really weird. It was something about black holes that combined quantum mechanics with Newtonian gravity and the mass and statistical mechanics.
I think
right?
this is it, right? The same T equals.
Yeah. So it was that form. Yeah.
KGM.
It was that formula right there, and he had a few years before this lecture, he had he had speculated about whether black holes really are not undivisible, and he had this idea that there was some probability that the black hole could divide in two, and he tracked down Richard Feynman to talk to him about it. And he talks about Feynman came to talk at, I don't remember, Columbia, I think, and he was looking for Professor Feynman. He couldn't find him, and he found him in the men's room, and he's talking to him while they're standing there, as it were, Feynman said, I'm not really interested in that. And then Feynman gave his lecture, and then he came over to Leonard Susskind. Susskind was a nobody at that time. And he says, "What's your name?" And he told him his name. He says, "I want to talk to you. I was thinking about this thing." And so he actually met Susskind, later on at a cafe in Greenwich Village, and they talked about this idea. And Feynman, just thought that quantum mechanics and black holes are never going to have anything to do with each other, because black holes are big things and quantum mechanics is about little things. And so it didn't go any further with Richard Feynman, but it did go. When Susskind got in later years, he got invited to that Erhard seminar or Erhard physics seminar, and they had these discussions about it. So anyway, I'm a little bit inarticulate. I'm not really telling everything about it that I'd like to. But
here's the thing, right? Like if people actually want to know everything about it, you should just read the book.
So the bottom line is that there's this thing called conservation of information, and it's central to quantum mechanics. Quantum mechanics doesn't work if there's a place where entropy disappears. I mean, thermodynamics doesn't work either, because if the information is disappearing, that means that there's a sink for entropy. So it's a place where entropy gets decreased, and that's a so if it disappears, it means it goes to zero, and
right, that's impossible.
So that's a big problem. One of the things is, actually Susskind points out that today, now, in the universe that we see, there are no black holes that are generating that are emitting Hawking rate or net Hawking radiation, because the universe is still too hot. Okay, so the temperatures that are predicted by that formula are infinitesimal fractions above absolute zero. So in fact, from outside looking in, black holes are the coldest objects in the universe. That's, they're black holes. But as the universe evolves and becomes colder, then eventually all the black holes will begin to radiate, which I thought was interesting. He had an interesting model that he described about a black hole, and he mentions, if you imagine a lake.
When we say models, it's theoretical models, right?
No, this is like a physical model. It's like a thought experiment model, a Gedanken experiment. And so he says, here's how he likes to talk about the black hole, and I'll repeat, I'll try to reconstruct the scenario. If you have a lake, imagine an infinite lake, right, that extends in all directions. And then there's a drain somewhere in the lake, and the lake is inhabited by little fish. He called them polywogs. I don't know what a polywog is, and the polywogs, he called them polywogs. They're some kind of little tadpole or fish or something, and they can only communicate, and they can't see, but they can only communicate by sound, and they can't swim. And there's this law in this lake, a physical law, that the little fish cannot swim faster. Nothing can swim faster than the speed of sound. And so there's a drain, a place where the water is being drained away from the lake. and at the bottom, the polywogs, when they get trapped into this lake, this drain, then they'll fall in. And that's the model of the black hole. And so he's saying, so from the point of view of the fish that's kind of like swimming near the surface, nothing, he sees all of the dirt and debris and the leaves, and his other friends are coming by. They could be very gradually moving past. But there's a point where the drain is draining faster than the speed of sound in the lake. And you can float past that, and then you can't escape. You can't call out, because your sound won't propagate outside of the the drain. And so that's the model that he liked. I liked it. That's the model he had of a black hole, that trying to related most of the principles of how black holes work. So that's kind
That's
of
really interesting that he uses a
right.
such analogy, physical
Yeah.
analogy, right, of these creatures
But
and
but
polywogs.
he argues that information can't disappear, and they think they resolved it because, as I say, general relativity requires that the clock slow down near the surface, and that everything that's ever fallen into the black hole is sort of impressed on that surface, and it moderates the radiation when it's coming out. I still have problems with this other idea that he has, that when Alice or the polywog, falls into the black hole, from their point of view, if they're not being observed, they just fall in. They go past the event horizon. I mean, eventually they'll reach the singularity in the middle, and that's not a good place to be. But from the as far as the information is concerned, that it's all preserved on the surface. He also talked a little bit about string theory,
Right, because
and
he does research in that, right?
and so the issue with string theory is that it actually is pretty well established for hadrons, which are things like protons and neutrons. And then there's another kind of particle called a meson. They're called pi mesons. And protons and neutrons are made out of 3 quarks, and the meson is made out of 2 quarks. And the principle is that what has been observed is that the angular momentum of these particles, when they come out of particle accelerator collisions, the angular momentum is distributed in a way that makes it look like the particles are connected on a string. And so in other words, if you have a sphere, then the angular momentum will distribute in a certain way based upon the energy. So if you give it a certain amount of energy, a rotational energy, for macroscopic particles, this is the case, that you can give the energy of a sphere and its angular momentum track in a certain way. Whereas if it's a hollow cylinder, if it's a hollow shell, then it tracks in it has a different signature, the angular momentum versus energy. For a rod or a string, two masses that are attached to a string, it has yet another kind of signature. And the hadrons, although angular momentum is always quantized, the trace of the angular momentum as a function of the energy that's put into the particles tracks like particles, or like the material or the essence of the particle is distributed along a string. And that's the origin of the string theory. The other thing has to do with what they call Feynman diagrams, in that the Feynman diagrams have nodes, they have vertices, and then they have like world lines of particles. So it's actually thought that the particles are not points, but they're distributed along a sheet in space-time. So if you have space and time propagating forward, the problem. So the issue has to do with merging gravity with electrodynamics, and people were coming up with these. They were playing with this string theory in the different points of view in the late 60s and early 70s, and they were going back and forth with respect to what is the right theory, or what is the best theory. And so they came to this idea. So there are observational confirmation of strings as far as hadrons, the big particles. For the inference is that there are also strings that are deep down inside of the quarks. So the quark, at at levels that are unimaginably small, and so I think the analogy that he related was that if a proton is the size of if a proton were the size of the solar system, the strings that make up the quarks would be the size of a virus particle.
That's tiny.
And at that level, the interactions of the strings, gravity becomes important. Okay, we never think about gravity. We never concern ourselves with gravity. We never concern ourselves with gravity for hadron, for protons and subatomic particles, or really anything that's in the standard model. Any of those particles, gravity isn't there. Okay, but if the distances are small enough, of the order of what I just described, then the gravity does become significant, and that's why we think that there's strings down there, and that the very the fundamentals of physics, or the fundamental particles, are really strings and little loops of strings that trace sheets, and like a sheet through space-time, and they're moderated by gravity, or they're intimately connected to gravity. And I don't understand any more than that, but I'm still working on it. Yeah.
I mean, you're able to explain it to some degree. I'm sure the mathematics are challenging.
So I've become really interested in this, and so I've been trying to learn as much as I can about it.
So back to our original topic with Leonard Susskind's book.
This was in his book. Yeah, this was in his book also. So
is this book can the average person read this, or do they?
Yes, absolutely, the average person can read this. He's not John Steinbeck or Ernest Hemingway or anything like that, but he just writes the book and he narrates it, and you can tell that he enjoys writing, and you can tell that he enjoys talking to people, or he wants you to understand this, and he wants to explain it. He's likely kind of a pretty egotistical guy, but not in any kind of bad way, but he does talk about, he's very gracious and very nice about Stephen Hawking, but I'm not sure. Like, it seems like there's something about Stephen Hawking that kind of comes through the pages, that he may not have been as nice a person. He was
saying Leonard Susskind is saying Stephen Hawking is not that nice.
No, absolutely not. I'm not saying that. You can't point to any, but I get
I'm not saying.
I just get the feeling that Susskind was extremely perturbed by Hawking's failure to understand what he was trying to say or trying to listen, and that he was frustrated with trying to communicate with Hawking. Hawking had a lot of like sycophants, that was my take on it, right? Had a lot of people that sycophant means people that go,
right.
Oh yes, Professor Hawking. Yes, anything you say, Professor Hawking.
Sycophants are those who are flatterers, right? People who just would just take Stephen Hawking's word because he's Stephen Hawking. There you go.
Right. And it seemed like it almost seems like a kind of, and I'm interpolating. Susskind doesn't say this. Okay, he's extremely gracious. He repeatedly says that he and Hawking were friends, and that he likes Hawking. But it's almost like he says it too much,
It's like, if you're actually friends, do you actually need to say it that much?
Yeah, it's almost like
tell people that you are friends,
and
you're afraid.
Yeah. So, but I could be completely wrong about that. I might be saying that, and if Susskind heard that, he'd get mad at me or something. But
what's Susskind working on these days, if you know?
Oh, Well, he, he's a professor. I think he's working on a lot of things. I think he's still working on black holes, and he's particle physics. And I think this string theory is something that's really got him um, him interested. So
So
he's quite a YouTuber. I mean, you can go on YouTube and find lots and lots of interviews where he's talking.
He's. Oh yeah, you can check this out, right? Cornell Video.
Lots and lots of videos and lots of interviews, and he definitely does want to communicate. He wants to be a science communicator. Like
Leonard
so,
here.
Like what?
Like you. You're
Leonard.
Yeah,
I wish that I was more articulate. I wish I knew more. I wish I could explain things better. I do enjoy doing that.
Well, so one thing I did, I think I got a book from written by him called The Theoretical Minimum. I checked out from the library one time.
The theoretical minimum is sort of like the minimum. What that means is that's the stuff that you need to know in order to study quantum mechanics and string theory and that sort of thing. So those are also a series of videos as well.
Yeah, so you can read the book, and for people who don't like to read, you can also find his stuff on YouTube called The Theoretical Minimum.
Yeah, right. So, but I mean, I read his book. On Kindle. I mean, I had a little Kindle of his book. So
he's written several popular science books. The Cosmic Landscape, that one.
Yeah, I haven't seen that. I might pick that one up.
The Black Hole War, which we've been talking about most of this episode, and then the Theoretical Minimum book series.
One of the nice things about the 21st century is you can wake up at night, and if you can't sleep, you can just get your phone and go on Amazon and buy a book, and
if you're a real nerd, then
So I can pick up my phone and I go, I can't sleep. Let me see what I have to read here. And so I go through.
I'm going to quote you on that thing. One of the greatest things of the 21st century is that if you can't sleep, you can get on your phone and buy a book.
And actually, you don't even need to buy a book. There's lots of free books, like a lot of books that are public domain and that sort of stuff. So,
a reader of books, I like it. Now, is this one of those cases where you couldn't sleep and then you ended up buying Leonard Susskind's book?
No, yes. I mean, yes and no. I mean, I wanted to read the book. I wanted to read the book, but I did. In fact, I did wake up one night, and I wasn't really sleepless. I wasn't really, that. But I bought the book and started reading.
You bought the book because you woke up in the middle of the night, and you were already
basically. And I was gonna buy it anyway.
Right.
So
it just so happened the time turns out to be in the middle of the night.
That's right.
All right. Yeah, lovely. I mean, I think one of the greatest things in life is reading. So
me too. and
so for those of you who want to buy the book, you can easily find it really anywhere that you can find books.
You can. Well, I got the Kindle version.
So if you want to go on Kindle, you can. You just look up Black Hole War.
I don't remember. I think it was like $10.
Yeah. So on Kindle, it's $10.99 right now.
Okay.
But that's yeah.
Anyway, that's what I wanted to talk about. I'm a Leonard Susskind groupie.
Apparently.
Maybe I'll go out and listen to. Yeah.
Does Leonard Susskind could he be a Leonard Kramer groupie?
No, nobody's gonna be a Leonard Kramer groupie. Unless they're really really sad.
You got nothing better to do, then you can be a Leonard.
Yeah, if you got nothing better in your life, then you can be a Leonard Kramer groupie. But I'm not even.
Okay.
I'm not getting. Don't give out my phone number. So
not doing that. All right. So what else can we talk about?
oh, you always have something to talk about.
Let's see here. Can I play this video? All right. Okay, let's see here. This is one of those crazy. I have not. So every time I play something like this, I don't know what to expect. This is on the website, UFOcasebook.com. We're entering the last segment. You know, I know who goes to UFOcasebook.com. Apparently, me. So this is this happened a few days ago. At about 5 a.m. in Austin, Texas. Supposedly, this lady saw something in the sky. All right, and she took her cell phone and
All
began
right.
filming. I haven't seen what the video looks like, but let's see what happens. Let's see. I'm gonna share it. All right. Okay, I'm gonna mute this thing. Okay, what is this? Can we? Here we go. Just skip all that. Okay, let's go from. Let's see. So, what is that? Oh, I guess I need to switch to the window. So, what do you think that is?
I think it's the headlights of a car.
Supposedly, she says it's a. You don't think that's something weird in the sky?
I don't even think it's in the sky. I don't know. Okay, it's something weird in the sky. It's clouds. It's the moon. Behind us, some clouds.
Well, that's
Yeah.
definitely. It doesn't seem that clear, does it?
No.
I like the jellyfish one from 2 weeks ago. We did.
Yeah. I do
was
remember that one.
All right.
That wasn't. Yeah. Oh, there it is. A red arrow. Yeah. It's the red arrow aliens.
All right.
All right.
Is anything else happening here, or is this it? Oh wait, what? Okay. I don't think so. All right, so I guess that's really it.
Okay.
So the object appears to be triangle shaped. You can tell. Okay, so there's sound in this as well, which I have not played, but I can share that as well for anyone interested in the comments. So
Okay.
but yeah, that's that did not convince me either. Surprisingly enough, I guess I just need to. If I want to take the extra step forward, I just need to reach out to these people.
Yeah.
Yep. So, in any case, for people 10,000 years in the future.
Yeah, they already know all about this. About quantum mechanics, and they've already solved the problem. They've built giant accelerators that that super colliders that are the size of a galaxy and have broken apart hadrons and quarks to expose. So they already know all about this stuff.
You already know everything we talk about and have ever talked about. For you, you're not learning science. For you, this is just a cultural experience to understand.
For the civilization, for the denizens of 10,000 years in the future, this is a cultural phenomenon. They're marveling at us, at,
marveling.
Yeah, they're going looking at the primitive monkeys.
Look at how primitive we are.
Right.
All right. So 10,000 years in the future, yeah. So unfortunately, I can't say leave a comment because we're be long dead.
Yeah, they can't really. Well, I mean, that would be. I mean, we could invite them to leave a comment, and if you're from 10,000 years in the future, yeah, leave some comments.
That must be a time travel thing then.
Yeah, that'd be a time travel. They could give me some, tips on the stock market or something.
And give Leonard some tips on the stock market.
Right.
Because that is the only way he will believe you.
That's right.
And it better be good tips. Okay, if you're from 10,000 years in the future, leave a comment and give Leonard some tips on the stock market. If
I
you're
know
from today,
I'm sure Bitcoin has gone to zero by then. But
but in all seriousness, anybody else who's actually listening in this era of the early 21st century, feel free to leave a comment. And thank you to friends and acquaintances and such and others who have left comments. Alicia, thank you for watching the show. And you said, I think more advanced form of the internet is in 10,000 years too. Of course, our internet is going to be way better than this one, I hope. Yeah, thank you, Matthew Lee, for watching this as well, and anybody else who has not bothered leaving a comment but still is watching.
Too
the show.
shy to leave.
All right, with that, lastly, once again, thank you to our supporters and Patreons, Cal Baker, Sam Welsh, John Graves, and also give a thanks to my former producer, Atum Ra, for
Lord Craw.
Yep, yeah. Always.
And
you can go on patreon.com/SG2 on space. And of course, this show, I'm assuming if you're watching it, then you are watching on youtube.com. You can search for SG, YouTube, SG2 on space. We'll be back next week, most likely, and for another exciting episode about something in, I don't know, not sure quite yet, but something.
No, either. We'll think of something. Hi, Alicia.
Yep. Hi, Alicia. Something really interesting. Yep. Just like this time, as always. All right. And Nanu, she says. I think that's
yes.
Something.
Yes, it is a reference to Mork and Mindy. So.
Yes. Something I haven't seen.
Orson.
Right. All right. With that, everybody, have a good night, and we will be back.
Mwah.
Yes, that was going to happen. I knew it. Look up because